Okay, how's it going, everybody? I hope you're all doing well. Okay, so in this episode, I thought I'd try to say something about the Lascaux cave paintings, one of the birthplaces of art. But for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, here's a brief history. So the Lascaux cave in France was discovered in 1940 by a group of children who were trying to rescue a dog that had fallen down a hole in the ground. To their surprise, after making their way through a 50 feet shaft, they came upon cave walls covered with almost 2,000 figures, most of them being powerful and beautiful depictions of animals like bulls and horses, and some of them even over 12 feet tall. It turned out that they had walked into a world that had been undisturbed for thousands of years. Virgin territory, unseen by any except for its original creators. Actually, it turned out that these cave paintings went as far back as the Palaeolithic era, or the Old Stone Age. That's to say, about 17,000 to 20,000 years ago, a time when humans were basically hunters and gatherers. Okay, well, so to me, one of the most intriguing things about these cave paintings, the thing that stands out the most to me is, well, the relative absence of human beings on them. I mean, there are some there, and there are others in some of the cave paintings in other places, like in Spain. But overall, they're marginal. You know, they're off to the side. They're not center stage. And when they are there, they're basically depicted as stick figures, and they don't have any faces. Instead, what does take center stage are animals. Animals that are not only depicted with grandeur and power, as I mentioned, but also painted with immaculate detail and attention. So we get this sharp contrast, it seems, between tiny, faceless humans and these large, magnificent creatures. Okay, so why this relative absence of human beings on these walls? Or why their marginalization? It might strike us as a bit strange, right? I mean, after all, I would say that we live in a world where we're never not in the picture. From the original Greek amphitheaters, where the human drama on stage took precedence over the natural backdrop, to the 10,000 selfie pics on our phone, it all attests to the same thing. Namely, it's all about us all the time. We're at the center of everything. Anthropocentrism reigns supreme. So, what these cave paintings seem to reveal then is that in the Paleolithic world, humans did not think of themselves as occupying center stage, as, well, all that important in the grand scheme of things. Actually, these bipedal stick figures seem to attest to this, no? I mean, these artists, given how majestically they represented some of the animals, obviously had the capacity to bolster us up a bit if they wanted to. But yet, they didn't. Actually, these stick figures remind me a bit of some of the famous statues of the Swiss sculptor Alberto Giacometti. And if you haven't seen them, they're these skinny, elongated, totally pared down statues without any traces of individual features in their faces. One called Walking Man is a good example here. Anyway, what's really intriguing but chilling about them is their inherent sense of fragility. Actually, Giacometti often chose to use plaster when making them. And that's because it's the most fragile and delicate material that a statue can be made of. So, well, why did he want to do this? Well, because by building them with this material, it helped him to convey a sense of human fragility and transience. And not only that, but by reducing the human figure to its barest essentials and by emaciating it, it enabled him to express human insignificance. Actually, his statues came to be associated with the existentialist movement. And so they were often interpreted as an expression of the existential fear and loneliness and contingent nature of humankind. Well, okay, so given these similar stick figures on those cave walls, I think that's sort of the view of the Paleolithic artist. That is, both the marginality of human figures and their minimalism in these cave paintings seem to indicate that humans were not the main characters in the show that took place all around them. No, this belonged to the megafauna that populated and ruled their world, and to the larger natural world. And is that a surprise? Well, no. I mean, they were nomadic people living at nature's mercy, right? They were surrounded by a largely hostile and threatening environment. And they were basically living under rock ledges. And so I think it's for this reason that their art, those cave paintings, was not just something made for its own sake, but that it served a more practical purpose. And what was that practical purpose? Well, I'm no expert, but it probably had something to do with building up their confidence to capture and kill these large beasts that ruled over their land. Maybe they thought that by creating these images of these animals, that they gained a kind of control over them, over their spirits maybe. That is, maybe they thought that if they made an image of their possible prey and then hit it with spears or rocks, that the real animal this image corresponded to would also succumb to their power. So, in other words, they might have painted the animals in an attempt to exert some sort of influence over them, exercising a form of, a form of sympathetic magic, sort of like a voodoo doll practice. Now, whatever the details were, I think we can assume that painting these animals and these larger murals was psychologically beneficial when it came to facing a world that was, frightening and unpredictable. And I gotta say, I think it's important to stress just how powerful and how terrifying nature must have been to them. I mean, it's not so easy for us moderns to get into this mindset. And that's because for us, our surrounding world has become, basically dead material to be used and manipulated by us. But for the Paleolithic person, the environment is a real independent presence. It's alive and it's a force of its own. Actually, the Austrian philosopher Martin Buber makes a distinction that might be helpful here. He makes this distinction between seeing the world as an it or as a thou. And the basic idea is that seeing the world as an it is seeing it as an object. And seeing it as a thou is to see it as a live presence, as something powerful and unpredictable and not susceptible to control or classification. Whether that took the form of a thunderstorm, let's say, or a 6-ton mammoth. Well, I think that was nature for the Paleolithic person. It was an awesome overwhelming presence, an in-your-face thou that you must show some kind of reverence towards. So given this, it's pretty incredible the role that art played. That through art, they thought that they might be able to gain some modicum and temporary control over nature, to sometimes compel nature to do as they wished. Actually, in this way, you could argue that art may be figured centrally in the early survival of our species. But you know what? I think that maybe the greater lesson is that at the end of the day, these hunter-gatherers, in their seeming self-effacement, knew where they stood in the grand scheme of things, which was not very high up. And I think that their humility and healthy respect for nature should stand as a reminder and as a warning to us and to our Promethean domination over the planet. I mean, ours is a world now which operates according to the technological processing of living beings, where we usurp and where we mechanize and appropriate and process life itself. How far have we gone since Genesis with this dominion and this irreverence is something that we will, I think, eventually have to reckon with. And when we do, we'll wish we had heeded some of the Palaeolithic wisdom and humility so beautifully preserved in those cave cathedrals in Lascaux, France. Bye for now.